Good morning. Thanks for joining me today. I wouldn't be speaking to you today as the Premier of our beloved province if it was not for the support that I've gotten throughout my life from small businesses. Small businesses that gave me the opportunities to have initially some seasonal employment, to save up to go on to university. Small businesses like the one I was raised in, a small family farm. You learn a lot of lessons from these experiences, and I have a great appreciation for the small business community in our province. I come from that world. I started my own business, and I understand the risks, and I understand the hope, though not just the backbone of our economy, they are going to be the key to our recovery. And we want to position them in a way that they'll be able to help themselves bounce back, and in so doing help all of us to bounce back from this economic crisis. Les petites et moyennes entreprises sont la colonne vertébrale de notre économie et nous pensons à vous. Nous voulons vous positionner de manière à pouvoir rebondir après cette crise économique. These measures that I'm announcing today, let us be clear, are not going to restore to all small businesses everything that they have lost as a result of this global pandemic. Nothing can do that. But it will help them bridge through the valley to a stronger and better future. And that's what we all want. And that's what today's announcement is about. My government has been working diligently with our chambers of commerce here in Winnipeg and across Manitoba, with business and retail councils, with industry and trade associations, with exporters, to identify where the greatest needs may be in Manitoba, where the current gaps are, and also to help maximize the recovery opportunities for Manitoba's business sector. We've been working closely with the federal government here as well, and that is important. We believe that tens of thousands of Manitoba businesses will be eligible for federal support programs, some which may be announced in future. Many have been announced already. For example, the Canada Emergency Business Account that will open for applications next week, the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program as well. Both very good programs with refinements that have been undertaken in large part because of the input of provincial premiers and others in the business community that make the programs broader and I think better in assisting Canadians in getting through this time together. However, the federal programs have gaps in them. We're focused with our plan on filling those gaps so that people don't fall through them and suffer further damage added to what they have already suffered. So this is where our gap protection program will assist. C'est là que notre programme de protection contre les lacunes les aidera. Our gap program will provide $6,000, up to $6,000, to small and medium-sized businesses that are facing significant pressures posed by COVID-19. Our program will be coordinated. It will be effective. It will, we estimate, offer assistance of up to about $120 million. Our businesses are struggling right now. They need our support. And Manitoba businesses will lead in our economic recovery. We already have one of the broadest support programs across Canada here in our province. And today's announcement demonstrates our leadership and our commitment to small businesses with direct financial support. This program will go a long way to helping Manitoba small businesses deal with the COVID emergency and position them to get back to providing services and creating jobs as soon as possible. I'll have more to say on the plan for recovery in the coming days, but we, all of us, want to safely get back to offering services safely to each other in this province. Manitobans are pulling together. They're helping one another through these difficult times. And I'll say again, an encouragement to all of you, stay positive, offer words of encouragement to one another. They can be helpful. Help one another out. Be patient. We'll be back, and we'll be back together. We can beat this thing. Thank you. Any questions? Happy to take them.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. A reminder to our reporters online, you will have one preliminary question and one follow-up question. First up, from the Brandon Sun, Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. This is Drew May from the Brandon Sun. Why announce this now? Why didn't this come out earlier during the pandemic?
Well, that's a fair question, Drew. I think that you understand that any program of this nature is, if properly designed, would normally take months, if not years, to develop and roll out. We've been working with our business groups, our advisory team, frankly. It's about 50 industry leaders from across Manitoba in the planning and design of this program. They wanted a plan that would work, and they wanted a plan that didn't duplicate or complicate other programs. So we've been working, and I just talked to the Deputy Prime Minister yesterday on this issue. She was very complimentary, in fact, of our planning and of our cooperation in respect of the design of our strategies, so that they don't overlap or confuse unnecessarily those who might want to apply for support. So I guess the shorter answer is we wanted a plan that wasn't just an announcement on the takeoff, but a plan that we could land on and deliver money to those who need the support as quickly as possible. We have that plan now.
And just as a follow-up, is $120 million, is that a hard cap, or would the province be prepared to give more money if more businesses qualify for that $6,000 loan?
Yeah, no, it's not a hard cap, Drew. We're, like all provinces, like the federal government, we're working in unprecedented times, and we're working with what data we have, but that data is not conclusive, and nor is there a precedent for such projections as people might want to get right now. That being said, no, we have an anticipation of a need. We think, and we're trying to give an approximate idea of what the size of the program will be, but if the need is greater, then we're prepared to go further to assist.
From CJOB, Diana.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Diana from 680 CJOB. Yesterday you mentioned you're taking a pay cut to help out during these financially tough times. Are you aware of whether any other MLAs are taking a pay cut beyond refusing the increase?
I'm not, and nor am I mandating that. All of our cabinet ministers and MLAs are engaged and working full-time plus. For example, in terms of the small business programs that we're outlining, I asked all of our MLAs, and I asked also in my comments to opposition MLAs when we sat last week, that they encourage Manitobans who may have eligibility for programs to apply. I can tell you that government MLAs produced a list of over 3,500 Manitoba small businesses that might be eligible for the programs. We are already in contact with them and thousands of others through our call center mechanism to help Manitobans become aware of their programs that they may be able to apply for and encourage them to do so.
And as a follow-up, we've seen the resumption of Parliament in Ottawa on a scaled-back form, both in person with social distancing measures and kind of other means with virtual question periods featuring senior ministers and whatnot. Especially in times of crisis, the opposition feels it's important to have sort of a question period. What steps are you taking to kind of do that here in Manitoba on a regular sort of ongoing basis while the pandemic continues?
Yeah, our House Leader and I have had discussion, and I know that discussions are already underway with both the official opposition and the third party to arrive at a safe way to allow for some processes to resume. We understand the need, and as a former opposition leader, I understand also the importance of the opportunity for opposition to do their job in a visible way. And so we'll be looking at taking steps to see if we can't reconvene, perhaps as Ottawa has done, once a week. They are going to have a limited number of people in a question period. I don't want to try negotiating with the other parties right now through the media, but I do have a real understanding that we want to be able to resume some work in the Legislative Assembly in a safe manner, and so those discussions are underway, Diana.
From the Winnipeg Sun, Josh.
Good morning, Premier. I'm Josh Aldridge with the Winnipeg Sun. I'm just wondering if there's been an update from the announcement that the legislative programs that were made yesterday, when we were talking with the federal government yesterday afternoon. Do you know, is it clear when those programs will become available for businesses who need to access them?
Right. Well, there's been a number of federal announcements on a variety of programs and changes to programs, as you know, Josh. Part of my discussion with the Deputy Prime Minister was to let Minister Freeland know that we were going to be partnering with the federal government on support for landlords, leaseholders, and so on in the business sector. We're looking forward to the details on the program, but we're anxious to participate in that program, and we are apparently the first province to give that affirmation. Other programs that the Prime Minister may announce in future, we'll be looking at each one and endeavoring to make sure that we're complementing effectively what the federal government is doing. We're not in competition here. This isn't about who gets the credit. It's about who gets the support. And that's why our program is designed to help those who are not being effectively supported by federal government programs. In other words, to address all the gaps that we can find.
Okay. My follow-up to that is, I know you want to get the economy restarted. You're talking about being one of the first provinces to get it restarted, especially looking at the curve being flattened. But how do you work that balance between safety for, which you've talked about, the safety for the customers and the employees, especially with the potential, as the CDC announced today, of a second wave of COVID-19 coming back even stronger in the winter? How do you strike that balance?
Yes, an excellent question, Josh. It defines exactly the challenge that every jurisdiction faces. As we relax the restrictions that all of us in Manitoba have resented but understood, we are going to put ourselves in danger of additional COVID cases. You could look at other jurisdictions for instruction on this. Singapore, for example, was very, very effective at limiting through mechanisms we've used in Manitoba, for example, like social distancing, hand washing, restrictions on large group gatherings, and that type of thing. They were very effective in early days at reducing the number of COVID cases. They then relaxed their restrictions, and boom, massive up spike in COVID cases and subsequently in health problems and deaths. So what our advisory teams, private sector, public sector are telling us is we need to move forward, we want to move forward, we deserve to move forward, and we have to do it thoughtfully and carefully so we don't have a rebound effect. And so that's the balancing act that we'll be addressing in our plan, which I'll share with you next week, as to how we go forward from here. We want to go forward to get our business community as much as possible up and operating, and our social networking able to happen again too, but with restrictions and protocols in place that keep us all safe. That balancing act is exactly what every jurisdiction is desirous of and what we all want to see happen. We want to be the first in Manitoba in restoring safe services together. And so it's fundamental that we pursue that with a plan, and we have that plan in final stages of development to share with Manitobans next week.
From CBC Radio Canada, Patrick.
Bonjour, M. Pallister. Patrick Foucault from Radio Canada. The Quebec government is hinting that it might want to open schools before the end of the school year because it fears that sending all children back to school at once in September would trigger a second wave of COVID-19. So are we considering doing the same thing here, so sending kids back to school in daycares before the end of the school year?
We are not. We do not want to risk a rebound effect, and in particular, all of us, with the love we have for our children, would be very, very concerned, I think, about moving back to a congregation or an assembly of young people in our province that might lead to a COVID case. So, no, we are not. But in respect of the small business community and in respect of things like community gatherings, I guess we could go to the possibility that someone has passed and their family would like to celebrate their life. Someone might wish to be married. There might be a baptism in the future. These ceremonies are not insignificant in the lives of Manitoba families, and we want to make sure that we have in our planning at least some hope that people will be able to begin to resume some semblance of togetherness in a way that they have not been able to do over the last number of weeks.
Thank you for that clarification. And on another unrelated topic, so my CBC colleagues have learned that your government canceled a $5 million order for gowns and goggles at the last minute because the province refused to send the money directly to China. So I don't know if you know what order I'm talking about, but what justifies that decision? And didn't we miss an opportunity to improve the PPE situation in the province?
I've referenced earlier the opportunity for Monday morning quarterbacking and outside critics who aren't in possession of the facts to make assertions. So I'll only say this. People on our front lines working in healthcare are doing an incredible job. I include in this a significant number of people in our civil service who are dedicating themselves to procuring protective equipment 24/7, every day, every avenue. They are working their tails off. And there is every opportunity to make criticisms of these folks, as there is of me or anyone else. But I would suggest, when it comes to our frontline workers, give them a break right now because they're doing the absolute best they can.
From CBC Manitoba, Bart.
Mr. Premier, excuse me, Bart the Cubans here. It seems from this loan program that self-employed businesses wouldn't be eligible because a lot of them don't register with the business registry. What will the province do to capture them and offer self-employed business owners some help during this pandemic?
Well, actually, the program will cover self-employed individuals initially who have simply done a business registration number, which we are told the vast majority of businesses have done already. If there are other examples, Bartley, that fall outside of these parameters, we'll certainly take a look at it and make sure we can accommodate as broadly as possible the need to support businesses of whatever description that are affected negatively by COVID.
All right, thank you very much for that. The second question is just from an economic perspective. You've talked often about the public sector needing to, make sacrifices that the private sector has had to make already. What's the economic benefit for the private sector of cutting back on public sector worker jobs?
Well, let's be really clear. I think there's been quite a consistent miscategorization of what we're trying to do. Within the public sector, we have a vast majority of workers who are working full-time right now in every sector, core, crown, everywhere. But we also have, as a consequence of things like the pandemic, people who are not able to be fully employed who are being paid right now. We also have resources that are not needing to be deployed right now. We have empty classrooms that don't need to be cleaned, buses that don't need to be driven, and I could give you a dozen other examples. What we're asking is for people in leadership positions in our crowns and throughout our government to find ways to take some savings and we can redirect them to the front line to support things like the protective gear we need, for example, to cover the costs that are being incurred by this pandemic. This is a common sense, reasonable, cooperative way to deal with a family challenge, and we have a family challenge right now. So we're looking to find those resources anywhere we can, and we're looking for recommendations to come from each of our various government departments and agencies. Look forward to evaluating them.
From the Canadian Press, Steve.
Premier, it's Steve Lambert from the Canadian Press. These forgivable loans are worth about $6,000 each. You said it's not going to make up for all the lost revenue, obviously, but is $6,000 enough? Does that last a long time in the hands of a small or medium-sized business? How many weeks does that give them?
Well, it's the most generous program in Canada, Steve. It's not enough. I wish we could do more. We're also the most indebted province in Canada, so I think having the most generous program in the most indebted province says something about what our priorities are. And our priorities are to do what we can to help businesses get through the valley, and we're doing everything we can to do that.
And the federal government announced this morning more direct financial aid for students. I know you've partnered or matched in some cases items like student loan payment suspensions and that sort of thing. But are you looking at partnering or adding to the federal program that was announced today in terms of providing emergency benefits for students?
Well, this gives me the opportunity to say that compared to many other provinces in the country, we've maintained our funding for post-secondary institutions specifically. We have, as a government in just 4 years, quadrupled the amount of money available for scholarships and bursaries. We've worked in partnership with the post-secondary institutions to develop, and we will continue to develop, better cooperative strategies to make sure that we're responsive to the needs of our population. That work is going to continue. And I can only tell you that I'll have more to say on Friday when it comes to students.
From CTV Winnipeg, Jeff.
Hi, Mr. Premier, Jeff Gill, CTV. I just ask a clarification of what the program you announced today. So is the understanding that the people who will qualify for the forgivable loan here, the up to $6,000, those are businesses who don't qualify or eligible for federal aid. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and my follow-up is to a question earlier. You said you're going to share the plan next week, to reopen and get going and recovery. Can you give any kind of ballpark timeline? We're hearing, after May long weekend, maybe Ontario, we're hearing, some kind of ballpark dates from some other provinces. Do you have any kind of idea? Can you share anything today with Manitobans, end of May, June, July? Can you give any kind of hint?
I'll give you more than a hint when I release the plan next week, but we're in the final stages of developing our strategies and then sharing them. We've had close to a dozen different study groups or consultative exercises that are underway. They're reporting here in the next 48 hours in respect of suggestions on implementation of relaxed restrictions and that type of thing, Jeff. I can only tell you that that analysis will be done, and then in conjunction with our public health officials, we'll be looking to give you specifically what you're asking for in the next few days.
From City News, Stephanie.
Mr. Premier, Stephanie Osuk with City News. Just wanted to get your thoughts on, as much as these low COVID-19 numbers, are you worried about residents kind of losing their own mindset on how seriously they should be taking restrictions?
Yeah, every day. I'm worried that people will think these low numbers are an indication that they should do things that would cause the numbers to rise. I'm worried about that every day. I don't want us to lose another person. I don't want us to have another case, but I know realistically that without a vaccination or a cure, that's going to happen. And I don't think it would be realistic to suggest that we should, any of us, want to never open our economy until there were 0 cases. That's just not a realistic expectation. But on the other side, obviously, we have to be very careful that we follow the advice of our public health officials and others who are, and thank you to the media for doing this, repeating these instructions, putting them in the newspaper, saying it on a broadcast. These are fundamental things we have to keep doing to stay safe, to protect ourselves, but also to protect one another. And so it's vitally important that Manitobans remember those fundamentals. I hope and I believe that as a government we've done everything we can to emphasize the public safety protections and the behaviors that people need to follow, and we'll continue to do that. But I encourage all Manitobans to do the same. And I say again, thank you to the media for getting that message out again and again, because it does require constant repetition. We cannot relax.
And just as a follow-up, when you say you want to give people hope about public gatherings in the future, and if there's any kind of cap on that, like, are we expecting at all to see, weddings resumed in July or August, events at that large of a scale?
Well, Stephanie, you haven't known me as long as some of your other media colleagues have, but I don't like hinting at things any more than to say I don't want to give you partial information. I want to give you the plan as it is. Just as we're doing today with our small business plan, we're doing the best we can to tell you what it really is. And rather than just announce it, we want it landing next week. So this is what I'm going to be telling you next week is the result of a ton of work that's been done by a lot of people. And it's to give a game plan that we can follow, provided that we don't place additional unnecessary risks on our population to get our economy and our social life back on track. So that's the detail that I'll share with you next week.
From the Winnipeg Free Press, Carol.
Hi, Premier. It's Carol Sanders at the Free Press. Tuesday, we were told, was the deadline for the public service and other reporting entities to respond to the government's calls for cost cutting. What kind of proposals and assessments have you been seeing, and what is the plan of action now?
I haven't seen any yet, Carol, but I am looking forward to getting a report, and then we'll proceed with a plan of action and make it public in the near future.
Okay. And with regard to the announcement today, well, how much help can small businesses get from the federal government before any of that is clawed back?
Well, our program is a gap plan. It's designed not to duplicate what the federal government's doing, but rather to complement it, to act in support of those who are not, at the present time at least, offered support by the federal government. And this is not a criticism of the federal government. I want to be clear on that. But their plan, as of yet, doesn't really offer support to growing businesses. For example, businesses that expanded in the past year or two will not be able to demonstrate they have losses of revenue. The federal government requires you to demonstrate that you've had losses of revenue, but a growing business wouldn't qualify under their program. We will have applicants who are growing businesses. We may also have many companies who do not have salary levels that are high enough to meet the federal government's requirements for support under the wage subsidy program, for example, for whatever number of reasons. For example, in many small businesses, accountants tell me that they encourage the business to draw dividends from the company when they can rather than salary. They wouldn't qualify for support under the federal wage subsidy program. They'd be in a gap. We'd be able to help a company like that or a small business like that. And as was earlier referenced, there are many one-person companies. That was mine for the first 3.5 years after I started it. And one-person companies may not qualify either for federal programming, whereas our program would. And the idea here again is not to duplicate, but rather to complement and fill the gaps that are there as a result of the design of the federal program, so that we're not confusing people unnecessarily, but we're supporting them in a better, more comprehensive way.
From Global, Brittany.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. I know you said you're going to be giving us details next week about the reopening plan, but you did mention Singapore, and I'm wondering what goes into actually getting this analysis done to make sure that when we're reopening, we don't have a situation like that. What kind of analysis are you guys doing? Can you share some of the details about that?
Well, you know what? Dr. Roussin will be able to give you much better detail, Brittany, than I can. I know that the public health officials are always monitoring other jurisdictions, not just in Canada, but around the world, and they're learning from what they see there. Of course, we're all dealing with a first-time unprecedented issue here, but we want to draw from the experiences of others, in particular those who were ahead of us, which is much of Asia and Europe. And learn from what has happened there that's good, and not repeat, obviously, what has happened that was not good. So this is why I referenced Singapore and the backlash, resurgent COVID challenges that their country has had to deal with. This is clearly not what we want in Canada or in Manitoba.
wondering if you could speak a bit more if this is kind of reopening the economy in general, if this is going to be increasing gathering numbers. Is this a little bit of both? What can you give us a bit of a hint towards? I know you don't like to do that, but what can you share?
Well, thanks for recognizing that you've asked me a question that I don't particularly like to answer, but I'll try anyway. I just say that we all would like to get back to normal, but I think most Manitobans understand that the new normal is not going to be the same as the old normal was. And I think it's about how we get to this new normal. How do we do it effectively? How do we do it safely? There's a lot of people that would like to, say hi to people in close quarters that they haven't been able to see for quite a while. There's a lot of people that would like to go back to church in some form, in some manner, understanding, as I think most Manitobans do, that it won't be in the same manner as it was. These changes, restaurants won't be organized in the same way. And there'll be many other things that will change, and we know that. But having a game plan to move forward to that new reality is I think, very important. And planning to do that safely is absolutely the key, so that all the work that we've done, that Manitobans have embraced, that puts us at the lead, frankly, of almost every jurisdiction in North America at reducing COVID numbers, reducing the growth in the numbers. We've flattened. We aren't reducing yet. But we're all optimistic that we can beat this thing. We have to do it together, but we have to understand too, and all of us do, that there are young couples, like one who talked to me on the weekend, who would like to be married. There are people who like to celebrate the lives of lost ones. We have these situations. They're real. And so it's really important that we give people a chance to embrace the hope that will balance restoring their lives to some sense of normalcy at the same time as they can protect each other and themselves.
From CKDM, Matt.
Hello, Mr. Premier. Matt Hamill from CKDM in Dauphin. Looking ahead to the eventual reopening of non-essential businesses, what kind of notices can we expect the province to give those small and medium businesses that are currently closed as non-essential? Will it be a week's notice or perhaps 24 hours? What kind of notice there?
Well, that's in terms of the reopening, Matt, I think you're asking, and that's what we're wanting to develop and share with Manitobans. We're nearing, I think, a point where we can share this detail with Manitobans, and obviously small businesses many of them are itching to get back open who haven't been on the essential services list, and others are also looking to expand their operations in anticipation of general restrictions that the public has been under to some degree, that have restricted their ability to shop or to move. And so these are part and parcel of the plan that we're presenting to share with Manitobans. And I would say this again, this is with the understanding, and I know all Manitobans have this, that these are provisional plans, that we have to be adaptable and nimble, and that situations can change. In Newfoundland, for example, one funeral, 150 cases. So we have to be very, very careful. And I think Manitobans understand that thoroughly, but they also want to get a sense of when can we get back to a little bit of a more normal life, and I think all of us share that concern.
And just as a follow-up question, today with the announcement of the measures for small and medium-sized businesses kind of falling into a gap, has there been anything else that the province has assessed, any other sector of the province that is perhaps also falling into a gap that will be looked to address by your government?
Well, for sure. On an ongoing basis, Matt, we're addressing issues affecting our economy and our social situations. I would give you one example in my talk with Minister Freeland yesterday. I raised the issue of our agricultural community, and specifically the issue around potato operations and potato farms. It is a very, very significant industry to our province, a very significant contributor to our economy, to jobs, to well-being, a major part of our agricultural sector that is very much hurting right now. Let's face it, there's not as many people buying French fries out there with these restrictions, and that's hurting a lot of our family farms around the province. So that's one example I could give you, Matt. And I would just say, on an ongoing basis, we're endeavoring to work with our partners, whether it's at the federal level, whether it's in the private sector, as I've referenced several times in today's announcement, or whether it's with our municipal governments and our leaders across the province, who I'm looking forward to seeing over the next few weeks. I have plans to reach out to our municipal partners in the next number of days just to share perspectives with them. We are continuing to reach out on behalf of Manitobans on all these issues, but today is, an announcement. Some will say too soon, some will say it's too much. That's okay. I don't mind. I'm the quarterback, and you can have your views about it from the stands. The fact remains, our small business community needs support. We're going to be providing that support. We're working in partnership and in concert with the federal government on these issues, and we'll continue to make every effort to make sure we beat this thing so that Manitoba can be the first in restoring safe services together. Thanks to everybody for being on the call. Appreciate it.